What is going on, everybody? And in today's video, I'm going to talk about helpful tips on how to improve your art for this year, 2023. Some of the things we'll be going through is making something different, giving yourself permission, practicing often, do it afraid, and lastly, reflect. So let's go ahead and jump right into those. Also, I hope you all had a great new year. So the first one I want to talk about is making something different. And if you can see already, I am painting a house. If you're familiar with my work, I usually paint portraits and figurative work. I don't paint houses at all. So the reason I'm painting this house is because my wife asked me to paint this piece for a client. So I said yes. And before this piece, I haven't painted, I would say, in about 2 weeks or more. Also, I do not like painting houses one bit. They're tedious. There are so many different colors to match. You have the house itself, you have the roof, the sky, the grass, the bushes, the windows. You have all these different things and colors you have to match. So it's a lot going on. Detailed, I would say. So it's very tedious. Although, with that being said, even though I'm not a fan of painting houses, I still learned something within this painting. Because when we make something different, let's say we take a break from art for a second, take a break from painting, what happens is when we're about to go back in, it can be intimidating and we can almost freeze up. We can call it artist block or anything that we would like to call it. The reason I believe we get intimidated is because the expectation, we're comparing it to our previous pieces of work. We have this expectation that we have to meet, or at least that we think we have to meet, that it has to be better or much, much better than our previous piece. And so what making something different does is it helps us take a step outside of our comfort zone and approach something with new eyes. And what this piece did for me while I was painting it is I wasn't as intimidated by painting a house, mainly because I didn't have much to compare it to. I only painted one other house. So that was about the only thing I was comparing it to. And that was an acrylic paint. So I was okay with painting a house and jumping right into it. If you're thinking about doing something outside your comfort zone, doing something different, I would say to aim for it to not be too detailed, because then that also can make it more intimidating. Something simple to jump into, a simple process to jump into. So the next thing I like to talk about is giving yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take a rest. Give yourself permission to say, hey, I've overworked this specific spot on this painting or this sculpture. Right now, this is all I have to give it, and that's okay. That's okay to do sometimes. A lot of times when we're painting something, we're constantly looking at it and reworking different pieces, reworking different parts of it. Sometimes okay to say, I'm gonna leave this where it's at right now. Also because if we're painting something for someone else, we have this idea that they're gonna see the mistake that we made, or they're gonna look at it and say it's not good enough. So kick those thoughts out of your mind. Kick the thoughts of how someone else is going to expect it or think about it to be. And what we can do is, when we give ourselves permission, we're saying, okay, this is okay where it's at. And then we move on. We move on to the next piece. We move on to the next part. Give yourself permission to move on and say it's okay. I feel that when we continue to bottle up the idea that something's not good enough, that leads to more stress. Another thing I like to focus on is practice often. Practice at least 10 to 30 minutes a day. When we think about practicing something, or let's say working out, when we think about the time that we're taking to work out and also the pain added onto it sometimes, we could be intimidated about it as well, and that's going to make us stop and not want to do it. I'm striving to practice about 30 minutes a day. Now, 30 minutes a day to me isn't as intimidating as an hour. So when we think about it in that kind of way, think about something that makes you approach it in a nice, simple way. Something that's not daunting. Something that doesn't seem painful. 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. Because then we find ourselves by the end of the week and so we say to ourselves, I didn't practice one bit this week. So practice often. Whether it be 5 minutes, whether it be 10 minutes, at least you guys are practicing then. And that's going to help you improve your art as well. Also, I put a link down in the description below to a resource and materials list that I have for artists. This includes what materials I use, from my oil paints to my brushes to my glass palette, from my easel to my cameras that I use and lights, also my desk that I use as well. So it's filled with a bunch of links to resources that I think is very helpful for artists. So go ahead and check that out. Another helpful tip is do it afraid. Whatever you're afraid of, do it afraid. Acknowledge that you're afraid. When we acknowledge and say, hey, I'm afraid, we put it in front of our face. It's no longer this airy thing that we cannot grasp. A lot of times we think about our anxiety. What usually happens when we try to control our anxiety? It increases, right? When we have something mental going on, what helps us to conquer that is to physically take a step forward. So if you have something in mind, such as you want to paint big, but you're afraid to, something to do is go to that store and you buy that big canvas. Yes, I'm talking directly to you. Yeah, I know you're pointing to yourself right now. Yes, you. Go to the store and get that big canvas. Take that physical step forward, because then that's going to trick our brains. It's going to turn our brains around. And lastly, reflect. Reflect on this past year. When we reflect on things, that helps us to better deal with them in the future. When I think about, if anyone's familiar with UFC and mixed martial arts and boxing, when they fight someone, after that fight, they go ahead and look at what they did wrong in the video, something they could work on, and also things that they did good. And what this does is that it helps them prepare for the next fight. So looking back at our past year, 2022, look back at the things you accomplished. Look back at the things that you're proud of. Look back at the relationships that you have and the relationships that you made. Look back at a bunch of those things and reflect on them. Sit there and think about those things, because those are going to help you for the future. Those are going to help you for this year. For when you're faced with those things, you have a better way of dealing with them, handling them, conquering them, and doing even greater as well. For the rest of the video, feel free to hang out and watch the painting. Down in the comments, let me know something that you want to improve this year, or something that you're looking forward towards. Let me know any questions you have and anything you want to see me talk about. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.